Welcome to the Liquidity Event, a show about all things personal finance with a laser focus on taxes, financial independence, and equity compensation. Hosted by AJ and Shane of Brooklyn FI, each episode will focus on a personal finance topic, some driven by news headlines and sometimes driven by listener questions. And sometimes you'll just get two money nerds rambling about what they think is interesting. Just a quick note before we get started, this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered tax or investment advice.
Hello, and welcome to the Liquidity Event. I am your host, Shane Mason.
And I'm Ethan Burroff.
Nailed it. And this is episode 177, being recorded on February 18th, airing February 19th. Reminder, email us your finance questions at liquidityevent@brooklynfi.com, and we will answer them live on the air. Mr. Burroff, first time on the pod.
Whoop, whoop.
Welcome to the Liquidity Event,
Thank
my
you.
friend.
Thank you.
Do us a favor, and AJ, just to explain, AJ is off traveling. She's got some private and BKFi related stuff that needed to happen this week. So we're having a new guest co-host on the podcast, Mr. Ethan Burroff. Ethan, tell us about yourself. Where are you in the world? How long have you been with BKFi? I think you have an interesting origin story related to the podcast as well that I'd love to hear.
Yeah. My name's Ethan. I live in Oxford, Mississippi. I'm a senior tax associate now at BKFi. I'm a CPA. I work a lot with the businesses on the business side, business returns, bookkeeping, and tax returns. I found my job through this podcast. Me and Shane had a mutual professor in college. And he thought that I'd be interested in what BKFi was doing at that time. And I didn't have any plans after graduation. So, I listened to the podcast a couple of times and sent Shane a cold email saying, hey, what's up? And here we are. I've been here going into my fourth tax season. Learn a lot. Love working here. And it's a full circle. Circle.
You listened to the podcast 4 years ago. Now you're on the podcast as a co-host. You have reached enough expertise at this point for us to have you on, and you can share your expertise with the listener of the pod. For those that listen to this podcast and don't know the value of creating a podcast, AJ and I kind of argue about it sometimes because our listenership isn't really like through the roof. AJ gets a little concerned when the number doesn't go up and go to the right all the time. But every time we go to a conference, we get great feedback about how people can stay in touch with us or just check in with us, or a candidate will listen to the podcast and get the vibe, someone that wants to work with us, whether it's a prospective client or a candidate like Ethan 4 years ago, and realize what it would be like to work at BKFi. So it is one way to do a one-to-many expression of the culture at the firm. I guess at the Liquidity Event, we curse a little bit on the podcast. We're pretty frank. We make jokes. We tease each other, which really is a reflection of the culture at BKFi. I hope you would share those feelings, Ethan, after 4 years.
100%. It was a great vibe check on the firm, and I was like, man, this place seems awesome. The people seem awesome. We work in accounting at the end of the day, and accounting sometimes can be a little bit on the more boring side, but like adding some humor and some personality to it, especially on the more mundane aspects of it, makes it a lot more fun.
Yes, it isn't exactly Big Four here at the firm, but we do get exposed to a lot of fun, challenging, complicated stuff. Shout out to Dr. Jay Shaw, who put us together. I was also in your position. I had been working as a bartender throughout college and really fell through the cracks of the internship programs, and he helped take care of me and helped BKFi get started. So I think we both owe a lot to Dr. Shaw back at Ole Miss, which, by the way, listener, we did both go to the University of Mississippi, which had a historic playoff run this year. And beat the Georgia Bulldogs. Shout out to Melanie, another BKFi employee. We have a little bit of an SEC situation happening within the Slack channels of BKFi. So shout out to the Ole Miss Rebel Black Bears and their historic run. So with that said, on today's episode, we have some really great articles that Ethan and I are going to dive into. We're going to talk about how AI salaries are causing couples to rethink money and relationships. We're going to talk about how winter was crazy this year and what was really causing that. We're going to talk about how techies in San Francisco are using Oura Rings instead of traditional diamond rings. Ethan, you have a wedding coming up, so looking forward to hearing about
I
your,
do.
which I will be at. I'm looking forward to hearing your take on this. And then, of course, we have a SpaceX IPO that we're going to dive into, and then a Reddit listener question that we're going to get into. So let's start off strong with the SpaceX IPO, or do a couple minutes on this and how this is relevant. Ethan, give me your take on the SpaceX IPO. We've got $50 billion being raised by the company this year, and it looks like we're going to get hopefully a horde of retail investors as opposed to just the preference for individual investors when we're slotted IPO shares to be raised. And this is going to be we're going to break a 20-year IPO precedent by letting individuals get in at scale for this mega IPO coming later this year. Ethan, your take on allowing your retail investors to pile in?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, there's a lot of firsts surrounding it. I also think I'm interested to see how it's going to go with. I think Elon's become a lot more polarizing of a figure than he has been in the past, and how, I mean, his brand and the companies that he's run really are attached to him at the hip in terms of they do well even if the numbers don't read like they're doing super well. Like Tesla's stock is still strong even though their sales are kind of tanking a little bit. I'm interested to see if the public perception shift of him in the last year or so is going to impact like the reach of the retail investor. Um, I mean, he has been very successful in the past, so I wouldn't be surprised if it works out really well for him here. I think joining them together, I didn't, when I read that for the first time that SpaceX was going to merge with, what is his AI company called?
XAI.
XAI. I was a little surprised. I was like, I didn't know it's huge. It's like a huge combination. And I'm interested to see if it's how it's going to go. I'm not going to be a part of the retail investing group. I don't think that that's something that I'm going to be taking a part of. But I'm interested to see how it goes from the sideline.
Yeah, well, there has just been this trend of keeping companies private for a long time and really allowing institutional investors to get a hold of all of the investments at Series B, C, D, E, F, G. And you can see this with Stripe, who's on like Series L at this point, where there has been so much concentrated private capital with VC money and private equity money where they haven't really needed to get individual investors involved as these companies have grown over the past 10, 15 years, which is kind of unusual. And I have split feelings about this because IPOs in general underperform the S&P 500, but we have prevented access to the early companies like in Amazon. Like we haven't allowed retail investors to participate in the blockbusters. So, I don't know if this is going to be a good thing for retail investors to get involved in SpaceX. I mean, it's got a really big shoes to fill. It's really got to create a lot of revenue to justify these margins at this, multi-trillion dollars that they're looking to raise at. But, at the same time, it hasn't been fun as a retail investor to not be able to access these big tech companies over the past 10 years as they've been kept behind closed doors. So are we just allowing the last dumb money to get in because there isn't enough institutional money to raise at these giant $1 trillion values? And we're letting, the last at the trough you just pay the highest price for SpaceX? Hard to say. Either way, we got a lot of SpaceX clients at the firm that are hopefully going to be profiting quite a bit off of this IPO. We're looking forward to them. We're hoping to add a lot of clients ahead of the IPO because it's not just like all your money gets instantaneously converted into cash. There's a lot of hoops to jump through, a lot of tax considerations, a lot of lockup periods. IPO day can be a nightmare. It's very anxiety ridden. And we've taken hundreds of customers through these IPOs in the past. So if anyone's listening to this, there's a lot of expertise that you can tap into here at BKFi that can help you translate this concentrated position into a real portfolio post-IPO. It's not going to be a one-day event. It's going to be a multi-year transition, and we're here to help you out and sell your shares to these other retail investors that are hoping to participate in the growth of SpaceX. throughout the years. Ethan, anything else you wanted to add on to
I was going to say that article mentioned Reddit as being another source that they save some of their shares for, like moderators and people that were in the community on Reddit.
really? Oh, I
They
missed that.
IPO'd, yeah, they IPO'd last year, and we dealt with a lot of. I mean, IPO can be
Mhm.
sticky in terms of, especially on the tax side, on like the initial IPO and selling things right after or right before at the offering. And that's, I mean, the tax forms are really complicated. There's multiple tax forms for the same sales, stuff like that for Reddit. And I imagine that a lot of people are going to, struggle through those, like the paperwork that comes along with all of the sales of private and then switch to public like
Oh
immediately
yeah.
after that. So,
Right.
um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I forget if they're on Carta or what platform they're using right now, but if they're heading towards an IPO, they're probably going to be transitioning to a Morgan Stanley, E-Trade, UBS, one of these platforms. And that transition is rife with errors. I mean, they got probably tens of thousands of people, or at least thousands of people that all of their data needs to get translated into these other platforms. And the HR at SpaceX has probably been really focused on helping that company grow and hiring rather than management of the ESOP platform. So we've seen historically a lot of issues with when a company transitions away from focusing on growth to IPO. It's just a lot of work, right? And there's a lot of opportunities for errors in the paperwork. So it's helpful to get another second set of eyes on this type of work, especially people that specialize in it, so that we can make sure that everything's filed correctly and we don't double pay tax, or if we do double pay tax, make sure that we get the right credits, whether it's for state issues or what have you. So yeah. Speaking of big transitions in the tech space, we have a great article here on wellness-obsessed techies adopting Oura Rings as wedding bands. I love that we were preparing for this podcast ahead of time, and we were chatting in Slack, and we were like, "Should we talk about this?" And Ethan's like, "I hate Oura Rings; they suck. I don't want to talk about it anyway." And I was like fingering my Oura Ring as he was talking shit. I was like, "Oh no." Oh
uh,
no, the Gen Zer is making fun of me. I actually don't feel like, I don't. Ethan, give me your take on the R ring. I have an idea of where you're going with this. I
I
understand.
mean,
Sometimes I think about hucking it into the woods. I mean, it is kind of nice to get some sleep data on yourself, but it doesn't really, at the end of the day, change my patterns very much. It's like, yeah, you shouldn't drink too much coffee in the afternoon. You shouldn't play video games till 2 in the morning because the blue light's going to keep you up all night. I don't
well,
know. Like the
yeah.
trade-offs are tough. You have to first of all, they're expensive. They're like $400. And then you got to pay a subscription, I believe, just to know if you slept well. I mean, and I've seen a lot of Reddit posts about how people will wear a Whoop, a Oura Ring, and an iPhone or the Apple Watch and get three dramatically different results. So how accurate are these things anyway? I don't know. Ethan, what's your take on the R ring? And then we'll talk about how the wealth tech and people in wealth are using these.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very much an analog person. I love mechanical watches. I think that those are a really cool thing. You know that. I love to talk about
Yep.
them. I think that they're really cool to wear. And I kind of follow the same vein when it comes to rings. I mean, a hunk of metal I like more than something that tells me data. I mean, at this point, everything is tracked. We've got data on your internet traffic, on your living history, on your car. Like you can track everything. And I think that, like you said, it tells you whether you had a good night's sleep. I can wake up in the morning and tell you whether I had a good night's sleep. And I know I don't need to play video games until 2 a.m. to have an app that I have to subscribe to that tells me those things. I don't know. It feels a little. Come on now. It feels a little extra. It feels like a little bit too much work. An extra thing that you're tracking, that you're looking at, feels like a lot of work for not a lot of payback.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. I think there is going to be a trend, and there has been a trend. I mean, it's a reflection on Silicon Valley where they are optimistic about data collection, right? A lot of people that work in this space, they work in data management. So for them not to drink their own Kool-Aid or eat their own dog food, so to speak, and like they create these apps and these softwares uh, that track data, and then to not track data about themselves would be a little bit disingenuous. And then, but I don't really think that there is a lot of use to get out of this until you integrate the data with other bits of information that are going on in your life. Like the Oura Ring doesn't know if you've drank coffee at 4 o'clock in the afternoon that day, so it can't really sync up your sleep data with other behaviors. But I did read about an OpenAI attempt to integrate Oura Ring into these other AI aspects of our lives so that there is trend data that can kind of sync these two things up. So I do think that is coming in the near future. And I do think a lot of the valuations, which apparently Aura hit an $11 billion valuation because of people tracking these things. And you have to imagine that these other AI companies, data is gold for them. So without this data, this valuation wouldn't exist. And there's some sort of symbiotic relationship that needs to exist where there's actual natural language that needs to get pumped out based on the analysis of these data sets that we have. So we're seeing that reflected. Now, in terms of giving it to your wife or your husband as a term of endearment or as a wedding ring, I am 100% with you on that. That seems ridiculous. It does also reflect Silicon Valley's focus on form, a function over form, right? And that like a wedding ring doesn't do anything. You can get a diamond ring made in a lab, and they are very much focusing not on the romantic aspects of life and more focusing on the utility of a ring. So I know that's what kind of ring are you going to wear, Ethan?
I'm just doing a normal golden, simple, single, tiny ring. I mean, we're going to go and get it sized, but I'm very much of the opinion that not everything has to have a function, that you can like things just because of the form. And I think that wedding rings can mean things like the ring that I got engaged with Sophie was my mom's mother's ring, and it definitely was not an Oura ring, and it doesn't have to, it looks pretty and it's fun to look at, and I think that matters as well.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's a shame. You won't have any biometric data for when the singularity kicks on, and you're going to be behind the curve.
I don't want any biometric data. I'll get my blood work once a year, and that'll be all the data I need.
You don't want to live to 140, Ethan?
What's that dude who there's a finance influencer or a guy who takes blood from his son and then pumps it, and he's spending millions of dollars to make himself look young, but he still looks the age that he is, 45.
We've talked about him so many times on the podcast. It's I think a large part of why he looks so old, I mean, he just has no tan at all, which is very funny. How just being the whiter you are, the older you look, which I find quite funny because they'll compare him to. There's a tons of reels or Instagram posts where he's just compared to Ricky Martin on the Super Bowl halftime show. Ricky Martin looked incredible, or was it? It was Ricky Martin.
He did look incredible.
He looked incredible. He had quite an aura going on. Cool. All right. So speaking of couples in the space, we have an article here on the AI industry's impact on couples and how we're having to rethink money in relationships. This is from the New York Times by Cami Reek. This came out on February 14th, of course, Valentine's Day. Before we get into the article, Ethan, tell us about your Valentine's Day.
My Valentine's Day, we went and saw Wuthering Heights. Mm-hmm. Went into it cold. Neither one of us had read the book, nor knew what the story was about, thinking that it was going to be, two hot people being hot for 2 hours.
Yep.
Jacob Elordi, good-looking guy. Mm-hmm. Margot Robbie, good-looking woman. Mm-hmm. We're thinking that's what we're going to see. It was very much not that. Did not know the story, and it is very emotional and mostly depressing, that story. So I'd say, prep yourself. Maybe have a margarita before you go, or one while you're there. Make sure you have plenty of sour candy so you can distract yourself through different scenes. Yeah.
All right. Thanks for the no spoilers. Appreciate that. There's a bit of an age gap between Margot and Jacob, is there not?
I think so. Yeah.
Margot's got to be at least 15 years older than Jacob.
I think she's older.
Yeah. My friend went to go see it, and he said the lights kicked on, and it was 90% gay dudes and 9% women and him, and they all looked at him afterwards. He felt like he was being called out, but that's all in his head. So. Yeah, good to see Jacob making a bunch of, I guess, indie. It's not indie stuff, but
Well, he's done Frankenstein, which
I think he got
was that a
nominated
Guillermo
for
del
that.
Toro?
Yeah,
That was
Mexican.
good. I thought he did well. I mean, I'm happy that he's branching out. He seems to be doing well. Happy for the guy. Get your bag, do whatever you
He's
got
known
to do.
as Robert Pattinson.
Oh yeah,
All right. Let's actually talk about this article. So the AI boom is creating a dramatic income disparities in relationships. Some tech workers are earning 5 to 10 times more than their partners. Has that ever really been different? And then couples are navigating unfamiliar dynamics around fairness, expense splitting, and traditional gender roles. The article profiles an AI startup where they've raised $5 million. Founded Coverflow. There's a 26-year-old, and they're dating a grad student and a female tech exec earning $650K, with a management consultant boyfriend earning a fraction of that. Yeah, you got into management consulting so that you could be the breadwinner in the relationship. But with all the AI gold rush happening, we've got people that are just outpacing their partners dramatically. Ethan, what are your thoughts on income disparities in relationships? You are going to get married in May. What are your
yeah. I
thoughts?
mean, I think like talking to New York Times with your significant other and going through the paces on. I think you should be talking to each other about how you want to handle finances as you get married. I mean, prenups are certainly a way to do that. I think it's whatever you can do as a couple that you think will make your relationship stronger. I mean, money is, I think, a big point of contention in a lot of relationships. I think that's like something that happens. And I think clear and consistent communication can solve a lot of problems. And if they come to the solution that a prenup is something that they're the most comfortable with, I mean, go for it. Have at it. The article, I thought some of it, like the people that they chose to interview, seemed a bit strange. Like you have a guy who's dating a grad student. Yeah, of course you're going to have income disparity between someone who's still in school like that. Well, of course. I mean, that's not a big leap. The other aspect is they interviewed someone at the end who he was paying, he said his half of the mortgage of the house that she owned. I was like, man, this guy sounds like he's getting the short end of the stick, like paying for the mortgage with not being on the mortgage, and she's also making more money than he is. Stuff like that. I mean, I don't know. They can split things however they decide that they want to split things, and as long as you're making everybody happy in a relationship, good for you. Everything functions differently for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, we deal a lot with this at BKFi. There's all time. We don't have traditional. I mean, we of course have traditional roles occasionally from our clients, but it is very interesting that the type of person that signs up to work with us doesn't typically subscribe to the traditional 1950s classic man in the office, woman in the kitchen, so to speak. And this article really reflects the tech space, their ability to move away. This is actually helping people break away from those old school breadwinner models. But with the lack of a architecture that our parents might have expressed or we saw in the 1950s and 60s, it does create a lot more work on people to create their own type of household, and a lot more conversations that need to be had, which we often have with our current clients, because there hasn't always been a third party in the room to discuss what's going on with the income in the household. And there's a lot of clients often hire us when they're getting married and they need to clean up their act, and this is like the big merger of the finances, and it's nice to have a therapist or like a money therapist, so to speak. And a lot of our advisors at the firm become those types of people for our clients, and they share some of their deepest thoughts and concerns and anxieties about potentially being a female. We have tons of female breadwinners at BKFi, and that is not something that they have been prepared for by society traditionally. And a
Yeah.
lot of therapists don't really touch on those things all the time. Sometimes they will stay away from money because it's a whole different aspect of the therapy space. So yeah, and then it looks like the AI space is just accelerating this because we have so much concentrated wealth. I mean, you've got OpenAI, a private company, raising at $850 billion. Like, I think it'll be one of the first private $1 trillion companies. SpaceX, like we just discussed, is also in that space, which you could argue with its acquisition of XAI is becoming, it has an AI arm, and AI is just being built into all of the Mag 7 and just like furthering this departure from the norms of the 50s. So yeah, this is very exciting, very interesting, and Ethan, I am going to avoid asking you about the income disparities, whether or not they exist, because as your boss, I am kind of in control of how that income disparity works within your household. So I think this is a great time to transition to something softer, which is the weather. Hey,
The
look at
weather,
that. We did
the
a great.
classic weather.
I just spent 2 weeks
Um,
in New York. The coldest, I bought a house in Mexico City, so I didn't have to do New York City weather, winters. And then we had client events and a bunch of investor events in New York. And somehow I ended up in New York for the coldest winter of like the past 30 years. And we have a Wall Street Journal article here on why it feels so much colder this year. It's a historic cold one. Ethan, what was your take on this? Like, why is winter happening? Why is it happening to our clients this year?
You know, I took this one a bit personally because Oxford got hit with a really bad ice storm a couple weeks ago, where
Mhm.
we lost power for 4 days. We lost water. We had a tree land through the roof. We have a tarp on our roof currently. We're waiting for the insurance person to come. So that aspect, I don't know, it hit pretty close to home. It's a little scary when weather like that hits. I Sophie was like very much prepared for it, expecting the worst of the worst. I was not prepared for it. I had stashed away like 2 things of Campbell's chunky chili mac, and well known we didn't have power for 4 days. So that chili mac we were heating up by the fireplace and we were roasting sourdough bread on my charcoal grill top that we had pulled and put on our fire. And I felt completely useless because I mean, working from home, I have access to all of my things, but then, was going to the bathroom via candlelight, looking like Ebenezer Scrooge. And then, it is what it is. But the weather, I mean, it's been really cold. Oxford hadn't had an ice storm like this since like 1994, and we lost tons of trees, and it impacted the community a lot. So, it can be pretty brutal when the winter hits really hard, especially in areas where they're not used to that type of winter.
Yep. Yep. I saw a cool graph that showed that if you're in your 20s, this is the coldest, and you're on the east of the Rockies, it's the coldest winter you've ever experienced in your life. West of the Rockies, it's the hottest winter, like the warmest winter you've ever experienced in your entire life for whatever reason. I guess from what I understand, the wind comes over from, I'm not going to get into my personal meteorology, but I find it very interesting. So anyway, moving on to one last article. We have a Reddit question here. Well, I love that you experienced a mini COVID, Ethan, with your candlelights,
It was a mini
Ebenezer
COVID.
Scrooge walking around. I know we currently have a couple employees at BKFi without power, so sorry, James. Looking forward to you coming back online once you get through this. Looking forward to the U.S. infrastructure coming back online at some point in the next 10 years. Moving on to our Reddit question. This is in the tax article today. We have a combination of all of our articles in that. We have somebody that trusted or thought they should trust ChatGPT to calculate their taxes. Oof, what a huge mistake. This is from TuneNut11. A while ago, I got the ChatGPT app on my iPad. I tried it out a little, found no real use for it. Then I started to ask some financial questions, bond yields and such. Ethan, I think about AI in the personal financial planning space a lot lately, is because we have a ton of employees, clients who have a financial planning space, and ChatGPT can pass the CPA exam, so can Claude apparently, but apparently there are still lots of hallucinations. So moving on, it gave me a beautifully organized summary of income organized into the boxes of regular rates, capital gains rates, standard deductions. When I started in myself, things did not agree. It didn't take much digging to find out ChatGPT had made a basic errors. It used a 2024 standard deduction. It calculated tax on my ordinary income, and I looked at the tax table, and ChatGPT was off by $18. So this person tried to run their 2025 taxes through ChatGPT, and lo and behold, it did not get anything right, but it did create the illusion of being on the right path. A very classic thing where it's very confident, sycophantic, and provides answers that seem appropriate, but unfortunately, it's not very good at arithmetic and or digesting massive complex calculations into an accurate summary. We need a deterministic type of software in order to for this type of work. So Ethan, what was your thought on 2Nut11's attempt to run their taxes through ChatGPT?
I was not surprised. I mean, I've used ChatGPT a handful of times and trying to get it to do like math. Like if you have like reconciliations of accounts and you're like, I have this list of numbers, give me the two numbers that add up to this sum that I'm missing on a reconciliation on a bank register or something like that. And so many times I'll do it and it'll make up numbers and they'll be like, well, this is really close. I'm like, the close is not like I need it down to the cent. And it'll be like, well, here's it down to the cent. And it'll make up fictitious charges to try to say like, oh, now how it matches. And then you'll look and be like, those aren't real numbers. And you'll tell it that and it'll come back to you and you're like, oh yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't use the real numbers. You wanted me to use the real numbers? I'm like, of course I wanted you to use the real numbers. I'm not surprised by this. Um, I mean, there's some of the comments are like language models aren't good at math. And I think that that's, I mean, like you just said, you need a different model to be able to run something like that. I think you need a dedicated US tax model with how complex and how things change so rapidly and so quickly every year. And that where it is now is not, it's not going to be able to do your taxes. You'll need to either figure that out on your own or you'll need to hire someone to do that for you. And that's what some of the comments are saying as well is like use Free Tax USA if you like can qualify for that. And if it's more complex than that, then you need to hire somebody. Those are kind of the buckets that people fall into.
Yes, it is unfortunate where we are at in the U.S. tax world, but keeps us employed here at BKFi, keeps you employed,
Sure.
Ethan. So I think that once we get Citizens United handled, then we'll finish it's later on down the roadmap where we can fix the tax system here in the United States. But I think we're 20, 30 years out from that being handled. So maybe we can ask Claude to figure out how to get those accomplished. So anyway, thank you, Ethan, for co-hosting with me today. It's been a pleasure to close the loop on you hearing about BKFi via the podcast and now being a co-host on there. I want to say thank you so much for our listeners for listening this week. You can email us your financial problems at liquidityevent@brooklynfi.com. And finally, you stands can leave us a review if you want to be weird about it. Thanks, team.
Peace.